Adapt This is a new series of mine where I'll be taking a look at a few mangas that I feel have a lot of potential to become a good anime. Here, I'll bring to your attention these mangas, recommend you to read through them all while giving its pros and cons. Additionally, when I can, I'll try to elaborate on what I think a good format for it would be, and which studio exactly I feel should pick it up within the realms of being reasonable. Also, this isn't really a top 10 list, just a list of 10 mangas. So, let's begin. Number 1. Gamblefish. Starting off this compilation is Gamblefish. This 19-volume 2007 work is a manga with some incredible potential for the small screen. Long story short, this manga takes place in, yes you guessed it, a high school. However, what differentiates this high school from every other Japanese high school setting is that there's a major emphasis on competition between children of the elite. So we have our main character, male of course, who turns out to be a prodigy gambler who joins the school while declaring that he'll bring down the school through gambling, and I think you get the picture. Over the course of the 19 volumes, our main character will meet some rather intriguing people, gather a rather impressive harem, outsmart some rather creepy dudes, and all in all is a whole lot of fun. Additionally, there are a lot of good things on the side of Gamblefish. Firstly, the work is crying out for color and sound with casinos, dices, gambling machines, and all sort of other items that would be great to have on screen in action. The manga presents a world that is colorful, which is a pity considering the nature of manga being black and white. There's an endless amount of possibilities for the combinations of visuals and sound, all of which I'm sure will be great. Another thing it has going for it is the fact that it is a complete work, as in we know the beginning and the ending. This reduces the studio's work and gives them a set goal of what and where exactly they have to get to. This will also help in production as they'll have a better idea of what to expect. However, there are some things that would take off a few points. The first being the art. While it would be unfair to call the art ugly, which it isn't, the art style is a sort of style that doesn't really feel like manga/anime. The best way to describe it would be the middle ground between a comic/cartoon and a manga/anime, combining some elements that remind me of both Western comics and Eastern ones. As a result, I do not believe that any studio will pick this work up without having to seriously consider tweaking the art. Granted, that's relatively small when you consider what the second black spot of the series is. It's in the name. This work is all about gambling, most of which between quote-unquote kids. While it's true that there have been worse animes that have come out, as in material, not quality, gambling is one of those weird taboos of society, one of those things you don't really talk about with anyone outside of your friend/family zone. While it might be sad, it would be unbelievable that no studio would dare pick this up out of fear of the negative public response it might have in the long run. If it does, however, become a thing, I'd love to see this done in the form of 2 25-episode long seasons. There's actually enough content for this, and there are more than enough spots where the anime can take a pause to prepare for the next season. I think that a studio that could work well with this series might actually be Manglobe. While Manglobe isn't exactly one of the more beloved studios, they do have a rather decent resume that falls under a similar ballpark to Gamblefish. With them having done stuff like Deadman Wonderland and Ergo Proxy, I'm sure that the rather taboo theme of gambling wouldn't be all that scary for them to tackle, while their other works like The World God Only Knows and The Sacred Blacksmith show that they have a keen eye on contrasting colors that help bring out the anime. Number 2. Ubel Blatt. Ubel Blatt is a work that began all the way back in 2005, which hasn't really received as much attention as I feel it deserves to. With over 17 volumes worth of work and still going strong, I feel that even as I am making this video that there must be at least one studio who's considering it. It's one of the darker mangas on the market without necessarily forcing itself to be. While it might not be exactly fair to compare it to Berserk, I feel that Berserk is honestly the closest thing to it when you consider the similarities. Both mangas have a main character with a rather dark past, who are master swordsmen who fight against demons while protecting who they care and working to get their revenge. Just to summarize the story, Ubel Blatt is about a prodigy swordsman who along with 13 other warriors fought against an evil force, but was eventually betrayed by 7 of his companions. This swordsman eventually found himself being born into a different body and starts his quest to hunt down the 7 other traitors. This manga is actually quite dark, but unlike Gamblefish, I believe that Ubel Blatt would have a much easier time breaking into its anime form, with other works like Akame ga Kill and Attack on Titan having shown that people are hungry for more relatively dark works. Ubel Blatt seems to fit right in. The art is fantastic with a great amount of detail and care being easy to notice. The story is fantastic so far and the world is just big enough for there to be a wider range of options for the future. Another big plus is the main character, who is a perfect mix of cool and awesome, and for all those who haven't heard of Ubel Blatt, I do suggest that you take a look. Unlike Gamblefish, I don't really see Ubel Blatt having too much trouble becoming an anime, and in my opinion its adaptation announcement shouldn't take too long. It has a good mix of action, adventure, and horror which sells well, while also having great characters for marketing and commercial purposes. I feel like this might be too optimistic, but I really hope that studio like Ufotable picks up this work. Due to Ufotable's great track record and pedigree, they've shown through their Fate series that they can do action very well, while also showing their proficiency with horror with their Kara no Kyokai movie series. Even for those who try to take away those points from Ufotable, if anything, I love to see their great animation and music, which have been a delight so far. Number 3. Liar Game. Ever since Death Note was a thing, people around the world have been searching for a next brain teaser, something to challenge your mind and eventually just blow it away. Gumbofish sort of falls under this, but not really. Liar Game, however, is probably the next big psychological work I've seen since Death Note. If I had to be brutally honest, I might even say that Liar Game is a more psychologically impressive manga than Death Note ever was. For those whose interest I've piqued, Liar Game is about a pure and naive girl who accidentally falls into a sort of shady tournament that either makes you the richest man alive, or broke and less than human. As she struggles in this liar's game, hence the name, she finds help from an ex-conman who was just recently released from prison. Together they try to release themselves from this strange competition while attempting to help all those who fell into the scheme, much like them. Liar Game becoming an anime would be a godsend not only for the anime viewing community but also for myself. Some of the things that happen in the show feel so incredible in scale, but cannot be portrayed as well due to the limitations of pen and paper. I wholeheartedly believe that if Liar Game were to become an anime, it would instantly become a fan favorite. There's a lot of room for visuals and sounds here, though I must admit it will take some skill to bring excitement to some rather slow parts. The characters are just varied enough and the little competitions are just intriguing enough and exciting enough that I feel many people will enjoy it on the small screen. The manga was just recently completed and I feel that it must have come under some people's attention. Again, Liar Game might come under some level of scrutiny for its scamish settings, but all in all, I think that the gains far outweigh any repercussions for this one. Liar Game is a delicate work. While it is a fantastic piece of work, as I said, it will need a really good studio to be able to cover some of the slower parts of the series. While it might not be the most creative pairing, Madhouse would be a perfect candidate for many reasons. Apart from their long resume and relatively good pedigree, we cannot overlook the other similar works that Madhouse have under its belt. Works like Death Note, Monster, Yusogui, and Psychopath all fall around the same ballpark as Liar Game, and experience will definitely be useful for this work to be done right. If we compare to the list so far, Berserk obviously stands out. While it's true that Berserk has found itself on the small screen before, that was back in 1997, when most of us probably didn't even know what anime was. Even for die-hard Berserk fans, watching animes that old take a good deal of love and dedication. Of course, we all know that the OVAs have come out relatively recently back in 2013, but even that was 2 years ago. All while not developing past that one plot twist that everyone has had nightmares about at one point or another. While I usually talk about the plot, anyone who knows Berserk should already know the story, or at least know how hard it would be to summarize. What's important to know is that so much has happened since the last place that the anime and the OVA left off. To give a sort of comparison, the place where the two adaptations left off was about the 100th chapter, and at the moment there exists over 300 chapters. The world of Berserk has gone through so much change, so many events have happened and so many new people were introduced, and for some reason, one of the most prestigious names of the otaku world still hasn't gotten worked on. We all know that Berserk formula works, that it had worked in the past and that it will probably work in the future. This isn't a question of who's going to pick it up, but rather when. After thinking it through, I do believe that OVAs like the ones released in 2013 are the ideal way to adapt Berserk. Even if it might be hard for some to accept, I do think that Studio 4 Degrees Celsius should continue work from where they last stopped. The story has enough places to comfortably split the episodes, and while CGI might not be everyone's cup of tea, I would forgive them considering the scope and size of the world of Berserk. Sure, some other studios might do it better, but I'm trying to be reasonable here. Number 5. Cage of Eden. When I had first started Cage of Eden as a child, I had looked furiously on the web to find the anime, as I had naively thought that all manga had an anime adaptation. I was sadly surprised, even till this day, that there is not any anime adaptation for Cage of Eden. Cage of Eden is a 2000 work that spanned over 21 volumes and completed itself on 2013. Cage of Eden was a survival story of a class of high school kids who find themselves stranded on a strange island filled with prehistoric creatures after their plane crashed. As the manga goes on, they slowly uncover where and what exactly they are on. Cage of Eden had what felt to be the perfect mix of elements that would make a popular anime. Nice art, cool setting, action, adventure, a hint of romance, and some good old fan service. But even till this day, no one seems to be interested in this work. If someone actually wanted to make this into an anime, they would actually have a pretty easy job. The story and premise sells itself, while the plot is complete with quite a bit of content that could even be added as a bonus. Granted, the ending might need a little bit of tweaking, but nothing a few good ideas can't solve. From what I've gathered, Cage of Eden wasn't really all that popular in Japan, which eventually led to its eventual ending. While I'm sure that sort of news could definitely impact the studio's perception of the work, I really hope they give it a try. If it does manage to pass all these hurdles, I'd love to see Madhouse pick it up due to how close in nature it is to Batum, meaning that they probably already have a good feeling for that sort of thing. The ideal format would probably be 2 25 episode long seasons, which has the perfect amount of content in my opinion. Number 6. Siren. Siren falls perfectly within the same category as Cage of Eden. When I first picked the series up, it felt that an anime was screaming to happen. Yet now 5 years after its completion of 16 volumes worth of awesomeness, not even a rumor of an anime adaptation has come out. For those who haven't heard of Siren, Siren revolves around a boy who hopes to save a girl who asks for his help from an alternate world called, you guessed it, Siren. It's a manga with a great mix of action and adventure, while also concealing some mystery and romance here and there. The characters are rather entertaining, and the whole story as a whole feels perfectly made in package, even coming with a red bow on the top. It's a manga that I feel would be a shame if it doesn't become anything more. There's really more good than bad, so it's a wonder as to why nothing has come out of it yet. If anything, perhaps watching the series might clear some confusion that reading it brought up. I believe that Studio Bones will be an excellent candidate for the job, as they have shown great proficiency in other action/adventure oriented works such as the ever famous Full Metal Alchemist, Eureka 7, and Noragami. Some good things have come out from Bones, and they've shown themselves to be able to deal with a wide variety of genres, so I do believe that Siren would be a walk in the park. Siren can easily become another 2 episode long anime series and will probably relish us for quite a long time. Number 7. Suicide Island. While the last 2 works clearly fall under the shonen genre, as it usually dedicated to young adults, Suicide Island is miles ahead of that, falling awkwardly in the adult genre. With 12 volumes released and still more coming out, this 2008 work would have to carve its own niche into the anime world. The story of Suicide Island is grim, much like its premise. With the increased costs related to treating non-successful suicide patients, the government has decided to simply ship all those who have tried to an island far from civilization and let them deal with their own problems. While Cage of Eden somewhat resembles the series, make no mistake, Suicide Island makes that look like a coloring book in comparison. While Suicide Island won't have giant monsters or demons chasing people around, that's also exactly why it's so terrifying. It feels so real. Throughout the story, we'll see some really grotesque stuff: backstabbing, rape, murder, suicide, abuse, which makes this an even darker manga in many respects than most due to the simple fact that it deals with real life issues. It might become a heresy if this manga becomes an anime, but it sure as hell does deserve some attention. The art might not be great, but that can also be worked on, and while it might not be everyone's cup of tea, it will add a major work to the more mature as in adult, as in serious, as in not hentai works that exist. Hey, since it's dark as hell, I'm sure it will become at least a cult classic. It's really hard to suggest a studio, but my best bet would be on Studio Gonzo. While they might not be known to be a quality focused studio, they have shown themselves unafraid to tackle some rather quote-unquote dangerous series, with stuff like Gantz and Hellsing popping up for having some rather obvious reasons as to why some other studios might avoid them. They've shown themselves unafraid to take risks if they feel that the rewards are as great, and believe me, Suicide Island will be a hell of a risk for anyone. Number 8. Vagabond. Vagabond is a rather niche manga, considering that it's a historical swordsman work. Started in 1998 with 37 volumes and growing under its belt, Vagabond is probably one of the better examples of feudal Japan. While other historical Japanese mangas usually look at the more important events of Japanese history and the key individuals, Vagabond instead focuses on 2 rather insignificant characters in the grand scheme of history, but very important for the plot. It's a great manga filled with realistic tragedies, excellently written characters, fantastic and unexpected plot points, and overall a wonderful piece of work. With it winning multiple awards, it's highly unlikely that no studio had ever considered the series, which eventually leads us to only a few possible conclusions. Either A, the mangaka refuses to let it become an anime, or B, the more probable, the manga is much too complex and emotionally driven to the point that most would be afraid that those key elements get lost when it becomes adapted. Vagabond is a beautifully done piece of work which I would forgive for not becoming an anime if that means that it won't damage its great reputation. If however some would actually dare give it a try, I believe OVAs would be the best bet. Probably something done by the same studio that had done the Berserk OVA, Studio 4 Degrees. Number 9. Addicted to Curry. If it were a year ago, I probably wouldn't have put Addicted to Curry on this list for one simple reason. Addicted to Curry has a huge emphasis on food. While the incredibly niche genre of food isn't exactly non-existent in the anime world, it's usually paired with other genres like action or comedy, with a major emphasis on that rather than the food. However, with the relative success of Shokugeki no Soma, I have been reassured that there is a place for such a niche. Addicted to Curry has a great sense of humor and an invigorating take on a food that most of us probably don't care about all that much, curry. No disrespect to anyone who cares deeply for curry, of course. With 49 volumes worth of content along with the set ending, it isn't unreasonable to think that some studios have given it a thought. While it might be strange, I feel that Addicted to Curry will work fine in OVA form due to it being extremely bizarre to try to balance the amount of content every episode should have. Additionally, while Studio Palm isn't exactly a very well-known studio, their work with what I felt is the closest feeling series, Bartender, has impressed me in a lot of good ways with similar values existing between the two. Number 10. GE Good Ending. Finally reaching the end of our list is, fittingly, GE Good Ending. Now let me come clean, I'm not a guy that is all that into romance, as it's not really my sort of thing and my experience and taste might be a little too weak. But Good Ending is a romance story that I feel is relatively good. It has a great cast of characters, memorable moments, some cute and cuddly sections, and some realistic touches, which brings together a rather good romance manga. As for the story, without spoiling too much, boy likes girl A but doesn't exactly know how to approach her, so asks girl B for help but slowly realizes he is falling for girl B. While it's true that romance animes usually have a rather small market share, they do correspond to a very large audience when one becomes very popular. It's important to balance out the sort of animes that come out every season so that everyone can at least find that one work that fits their taste. GE is a rather happy-go-lucky type of story, but it does have elements that make it feel less cookie-cut and more real and humane. If anything, the fact that I had taken the time to actually read the series through with my little care for romance in general should be pretty indicative of its magnetic appeal. Sadly, I have very little knowledge of which studio makes the best romance anime, but I imagine a studio like JC Staff or Kyoto Animation should do fine with their disgustingly impressive track record. Now there you have it, folks, the first of my new Adapt This series. Obviously there are just so many other mangas that deserve attention, but for the sake of time I've narrowed it down to 10 that are, in my opinion, integral to Face. Either way, leave your responses below, and if you can, leave a like or subscribe and all that sort of stuff. As you all know, these little things help me out in the long run. But anyway, this has been Wyvern and my box.